The crystal chandeliers of New York's grandest charity gala glittered like frozen starlight, casting shimmering light over hundreds of elite guests. Designer gowns, tailored tuxedos, and clinking champagne glasses filled the ballroom. This was the city's most exclusive annual fundraiser, where billionaires, CEOs, and socialites gathered to donate millions and flaunt their status. To everyone in the room, I was just another invisible staff member, nothing more than a temporary waitress working the evening shift. No one knew my real name. No one knew I was the wife of Julian Carter, one of America's most influential billionaire philanthropists. No one guessed I belonged at the top of this social ladder, not on the floor serving drinks. I'd chosen this disguise intentionally. For months I'd watched the elite charity circle grow corrupt. Fake donations, staged generosity, and arrogant power plays had turned a community fundraiser into a status competition. Julian and I agreed I would go undercover as staff to observe the truth without bias, to see exactly how the wealthy treated people they deemed beneath them. I wore a simple black waitress uniform, plain black flats, and my hair pulled back in a tight, unassuming bun. I'd removed all my jewelry, wiped off every trace of makeup, and toned down every detail of my usual polished appearance. In this crowd of glamorous socialites, I blended into the background perfectly, quiet, unremarkable, and easily overlooked. For 3 hours, I moved silently through the crowd, carrying trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres. I listened to conversations no elite guest would ever have in front of their peers. I heard socialites mock small donors, CEOs brag about fraudulent charity write-offs, and influencers plan fake viral charity moments for their followers. The hypocrisy was thick enough to taste. These people claimed to support community good, yet they treated service staff like disposable furniture. The worst of them all was Serena Voss, the young, arrogant girlfriend of rising tech CEO Elias Kane. Serena was a frequent gala attendee, obsessed with climbing the social ladder and proving her status. She carried herself like she owned every room she walked into, looking down on anyone who didn't wear a designer label or hold a six-figure title. I'd watched her snap at valets, roll her eyes at volunteer staff, and talk down to junior employees all night long. Halfway through the evening, I crossed the ballroom to refill empty champagne flutes. The crowd had grown louder, more intoxicated, and far more entitled. As I stepped past a crowded VIP table, Serena's sharp voice cut through the chatter, directed straight at me. "Waitress, you spilled champagne on my dress. Are you blind?" I froze. I hadn't spilled a single drop. Her floor-length silk gown was spotless, pristine under the crystal lights. I recognized the lie instantly. She was simply bored, craving attention, and looking for someone to bully, to boost her ego in front of her wealthy friends. I set my tray down gently on a nearby side table and spoke in a calm, neutral tone. "I apologize if I came too close, ma'am, but there's no spill on your gown. I can check for you if you'd like." My politeness only fueled her arrogance. Serena stood up from her chair, towering over me with a cruel, smug smile. Her group of friends fell silent, ready to watch a public humiliation for entertainment. In their world, picking on service staff was a trivial, amusing pastime. No spill. Serena laughed sharply, tilting her head. "You think you can lie to me and get away with it? You think because you're some random minimum wage server, you're allowed to disrespect me? I'm dating Elias Kane. My time, my dress, my status is worth more than your entire year's salary." I kept my composure steady, refusing to rise to her bait. "I meant no disrespect. I'm simply telling the truth." Truth, however, was the last thing Serena wanted to hear. In front of dozens of watching elites, she reached forward, grabbed the shoulder of my plain black uniform, and pulled hard. The crisp fabric tore open down my side with a loud, ripping sound. Gasps rippled through the nearby crowd. Cold air hit my exposed skin, and the simple uniform hung broken on my body. Serena's smirk widened, unashamed and cruel. "Now everyone can see exactly how insignificant you are. A cheap uniform for a cheap, replaceable girl. Learn your place. Don't ever speak back to someone above you again." She turned back to her friends, laughing like she'd just pulled a harmless prank, while I stood frozen in the middle of the ballroom, my dress torn open, every eye in the nearby crowd locked on me. No one stepped in to help. No one defended me. To them, I was just a waitress, too low status to deserve dignity, too powerless to fight back. What none of them knew was that my husband had been watching the entire scene from the private VIP balcony at the back of the ballroom. Julian Carter never missed a single thing, and he never tolerated anyone humiliating his wife. The quiet, invisible waitress they'd mocked and broken was about to rewrite every single rule of their elite world. The ballroom buzzed with shocked whispers and quiet laughter after Serena tore my dress apart. Wealthy guests turned their heads, curious and entertained by the public drama. In their privileged bubble, Conflict involving low-level staff was rare and thrilling, a break from their polished, perfect social routines. No one considered my embarrassment. No one cared that I stood exposed and humiliated in front of hundreds of strangers. Serena soaked up every second of the attention. She adjusted her diamond necklace and flipped her glossy hair, leaning into her victim act for the crowd. I can't believe how unprofessional the staff is tonight. This girl nearly ruined my custom gown and had the audacity to lie about it. Someone needs to fire her immediately. Her boyfriend, Elias Kane, stood beside her, a tall, cold man with a sharp jaw and even colder demeanor. He was the CEO of a booming tech startup, newly wealthy, newly powerful, and desperate to cement his status in New York's elite circles. Instead of calming Serena down or checking if I was okay, he simply nodded in agreement, his tone dismissive. It's unacceptable. Staff should know better than to argue with guests. You should apologize right now. He directed the demand straight at me, like I was a misbehaving child who needed discipline. I lifted my gaze, my voice steady despite the chaos around me. I have nothing to apologize for. I did not spill anything, and I did not disrespect anyone. Your girlfriend tore my uniform unprovoked in front of this entire room. My refusal to bow down infuriated Serena further. She stepped closer, her voice sharp and venomous, low enough only I could hear the cruelty. You're nothing. A poor, ordinary girl working for tips. I can get you fired tonight. I can make sure you never work in this city again. Don't test me. I'd endured condescension, judgment, and arrogance all night long, but this deliberate, personal threat crossed every line. Still, I held my ground. I didn't need to fight dirty. I didn't need to scream or cause a scene. I knew the truth, and soon everyone else would too. A few event organizers rushed over, panic on their faces. They recognized Serena and Elias as high-profile donors, people who wrote massive checks for their charity events every year. Terrified of offending their biggest sponsors, they immediately sided with the elites. I'm so sorry for the trouble, Ms. Voss, one organizer rambled nervously, turning to me with a harsh tone. You need to apologize immediately. This is unacceptable behavior for Gala staff. If you refuse, you're terminated on the spot. The unfairness burned hot in my chest. I was the victim here, yet I was the one facing punishment. Serena's cruel, unprovoked public humiliation was being rewarded, while my silence and professionalism were being penalized. It was the ugliest side of wealth and status, power overriding truth. Privilege overriding basic human decency. Serena smiled triumphantly, knowing she had the entire room on her side. See, no one's on your side. In this world, money and status are the only truths that matter. You'll always lose to people like me. Just as I prepared to respond, a quiet, powerful silence fell over the ballroom. The whispering stopped. The laughter faded. Every head in the room slowly turned toward the grand staircase at the back of the venue. A single man stood at the top of the steps, his presence so commanding, it quieted the entire elite crowd in an instant. Julian Carter. Tall, composed, and impossibly poised in a tailored black tuxedo, he didn't need to shout or gesture to command attention. His reputation alone was enough to silence a room full of entitled billionaires. He was the largest donor for this charity gala, the most respected philanthropist in the state, and the man whose funding kept nearly all of these elite events running. He walked slowly down the staircase, every step deliberate and calm. His eyes never left mine, soft with concern, sharp with unspoken anger. The crowd parted for him instinctively, like commoners making way for royalty. Serena's confident smirk faltered. She knew exactly who Julian was. Everyone did. She straightened her posture, suddenly nervous, desperate to appear polite and respectable in front of the city's most powerful billionaire. Elias's confident demeanor crumbled too. As a newly successful startup CEO, he was still climbing the ranks. Julian Carter was the man every young entrepreneur dreamed of impressing, the person whose investment could make or break his entire company. No one in the room understood why Julian's gaze was locked on the waitress in the torn uniform. No one knew why the most powerful man in the room looked at me like I was his entire world. They were seconds away from learning the devastating truth that would shatter every illusion they held about status, wealth, and power. Julian crossed the ballroom floor in long, steady strides, closing the distance between us in seconds. The entire room remained frozen, every guest watching in stunned silence. No one dared speak, no one dared move. The atmosphere shifted from playful gossip to tense, anxious anticipation. He stopped directly in front of me, ignoring every elite guest surrounding us, ignoring Serena and Elias entirely. His eyes scanned my torn uniform, my exposed shoulder, and the faint exhaustion in my expression. The gentle concern in his gaze masked a cold, unyielding fury underneath. He reached forward slowly, slipping his tailored suit jacket off his shoulders and draping it over my broken uniform, covering my exposed skin completely. The warm fabric smelled like his usual cologne, safe and familiar, wrapping me in protection in front of the entire crowd. His voice was low, calm, and only for my ears. "Are you okay?" I nodded softly, breathing out the tension I'd been holding for minutes. I'm fine now. Only then did Julian turn to face the crowd and the stunned couple standing before us. Serena's confident smile was completely gone, replaced by nervous uncertainty. She straightened her dress, trying to look innocent and graceful, desperate to win Julian's favor. "Mr. Carter, it's such an honor to meet you," she gushed, extending her hand for a polite greeting. "I'm Serena Voss. This is my boyfriend Elias Kane. We're huge admirers of your philanthropic work. I'm so sorry if this staff disturbance distracted from the gala tonight." Julian didn't shake her hand. He didn't acknowledge her greeting at all. His gaze cut straight through her fake politeness, cold and unimpressed. "Disturbance?" he repeated, his tone quiet but devastatingly firm. "The only disturbance here is the unprovoked public humiliation of an innocent person." Serena blinked in shock, her smile freezing on her face. The crowd held its breath. No one ever spoke to elite guests like this, especially not at a charity event designed to honor donors. Elias stepped forward, attempting to smooth over the awkward tension, his tone overly respectful. "Mr. Carter, I think there's a misunderstanding here. This staff member was unprofessional with my girlfriend, and things simply escalated. We don't want any trouble. There is no misunderstanding," Julian interrupted, his voice steady and unwavering. "I watched every second of what happened. She did nothing wrong. Your girlfriend tore her dress apart in front of this entire room out of pure arrogance and cruelty." A murmur rippled through the crowd. The guests couldn't believe what they were hearing. Julian Carter was famously calm, diplomatic, and reserved in public. He never engaged in public conflict, never called out donors, never created scenes. Yet here he was, openly condemning two high-profile guests in front of hundreds of elites. Serena's face flushed red with embarrassment and panic. She tried to salvage her reputation, her voice shaking. "Mr. Carter, you don't understand. She lied to me. She was disrespectful. I understand perfectly." Julian's gaze sharpened, cutting her off mid-excuse. "You targeted someone you believed was powerless. You thought her job, her status, and her income made her less worthy of basic dignity. You thought you could humiliate her with zero consequences." He paused, letting his words sink into every corner of the silent ballroom, letting every arrogant elite guest absorb the lesson. "You judge people's worth by their titles and their bank accounts. That's the difference between you and me. I donate hundreds of millions to charity because I believe every human being deserves respect. You attend charity galas only to flaunt your status." Elias's face paled. He realized he'd made a catastrophic mistake. He'd sided with cruelty against the most powerful man in the room, all to please his entitled girlfriend. Serena refused to back down entirely, still clinging to her pride. "With all due respect, Mr. Carter, she's just a waitress. I'm a verified socialite. My boyfriend is a successful CEO. Our status matters here. Why are you defending a random staff member over us?" The room went dead silent. This was the question everyone was dying to ask. Why would a billionaire defend an ordinary waitress over wealthy, influential donors? Julian's lips curled into a cold, subtle smile. He turned back to me, his gaze softening instantly, before returning his attention to the stunned couple. His next words shattered every illusion in the room. "You want to know why I'm defending her?" He paused, clear and unmistakable. "Because she's my wife." The four words hung in the air like a detonation, exploding across the silent ballroom. Every guest in the crowd froze completely, their eyes wide with disbelief. Whispers erupted instantly, loud and chaotic, sweeping through the entire venue like a tidal wave. His wife. The waitress is Julian Carter's wife? I had no idea he was married. For years, New York's elite circles had speculated endlessly about Julian Carter's love life. He was one of the most eligible billionaires in the country. Wealthy, charitable, handsome, and famously private. Tabloids ran constant rumors about potential romances, socialites actively pursued him, and every elite event saved him a VIP seat. Yet he never publicly dated, never attended galas with a +1, never revealed any details about his personal life. No one in this entire room knew he was married. No one knew his wife had been standing among them all night, disguised as a humble waitress, silently observing their fake charity and arrogant behavior. Serena's face drained of all color in an instant. Her confident posture crumpled, her eyes widening in pure terror. The smug, entitled arrogance that had defined her all night vanished completely, replaced by cold, crippling panic. She'd just publicly humiliated, degraded, and torn the dress of the billionaire's wife, the most powerful woman in this entire charity community. Elias's jaw dropped open in shock. He staggered backward half a step, his professional composure completely shattered. As a rising tech CEO whose entire future relied on elite connections and investor funding, he'd just offended the most influential investor in New York. His company's reputation, his career, his social status. Everything was hanging by a thread. Julian kept his gaze locked on the shell-shocked couple, his tone steady and unyielding, no mercy in his voice. My wife didn't attend this gala to flaunt diamonds or chase social clout. She came here to observe the true character of the people who claim to dedicate their wealth to charity. What she witnessed tonight was greed, arrogance, and cruelty, disguised as generosity. He gestured to my torn uniform, the jacket still wrapped securely around my shoulders. You tore her dress, humiliated her in front of hundreds, threatened her livelihood, and dismissed her dignity because you thought she was poor and powerless. You thought status made you superior. You were wrong, Serena stammered frantically, rushing to backtrack, her voice shaking uncontrollably. I had no idea. I swear I didn't know. If I'd known she was your wife, I never would have done this. It was a terrible misunderstanding, Mr. Carter. Please forgive me. Ignorance is not an excuse for cruelty, Julian replied firmly. You didn't need to know her identity to treat her like a human being. You chose to bully someone vulnerable because you thought there would be no consequences. That's not a misunderstanding. That's your true character. The crowd watched in stunned silence, every single guest replaying the night's events in their heads. They'd all stood by and watched my humiliation. They'd all laughed, whispered, and sided with Serena simply because she was wealthy, and I was in a staff uniform. Now they all stood guilty of the same judgment, valuing status over humanity. Elias attempted to salvage the disaster, his tone desperate and pleading. Mr. Carter, I sincerely apologize for my girlfriend's behavior and my own failure to intervene. This does not reflect our values at my company. We deeply support your charitable mission, and we hope this incident will not tarnish our reputation with you. Julian's expression didn't shift. Your reputation was tarnished the second you chose to defend unprovoked cruelty. You stood by and watched an innocent woman be humiliated instead of choosing kindness. That speaks volumes about your company's culture and your personal character. He turned to the event organizers, who stood frozen nearby, pale and terrified of the fallout. This gala claims to promote kindness, equity, and community support. Yet your staff are bullied, your guests are entitled, and your judgment is based solely on wealth and status. Effective immediately, I am withdrawing all future funding from this organization. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Julian's annual donations were the backbone of this charity. Without his funding, the entire foundation would collapse. The organizers' worst nightmare had just come true, their biggest sponsor pulling out over their failure to protect basic human decency. Julian slipped his arm gently around my waist, pulling me close, shielding me from every staring eye. Every person in this room witnessed what happened tonight. Let this be a lesson. True wealth is not measured by gowns, titles, or bank accounts. It's measured by how you treat people who can do nothing for you. With that final statement, he turned and walked me out of the silent ballroom, leaving a room full of stunned elites, a disgraced couple, and a crumbling charity foundation in our wake. The second we stepped through the gala's exit doors and into the quiet private hallway, Julian's rigid, authoritative demeanor softened completely. He turned to me immediately, his hands gently cupping my face, his eyes filled with nothing but tender concern. "Are you truly okay?" he asked again, his voice quiet and intimate, no longer the commanding tone he'd used for the crowd. "I'm so sorry I let this happen. I should have stepped in sooner." I shook my head, smiling softly, touched by his protectiveness. "You did everything perfectly. I'm fine, honestly. I chose to go undercover knowing there would be arrogance. I just didn't expect such deliberate cruelty." Julian's gaze drifted down to my torn uniform, frustration flickering in his eyes. "No one gets to treat you like that, ever. I don't care what the situation is, what room we're in, or who they are. You're my wife, and you deserve unconditional respect." He helped me adjust his suit jacket securely around my body, ensuring I was fully covered, before guiding me toward the private waiting car outside. As we left, we could hear the chaotic uproar still unfolding inside the ballroom. The entire gala had devolved into non-stop gossip and panic. Guests were texting, calling, and posting about the shocking reveal, spreading the story across New York's elite social circles within minutes. Inside the venue, Serena and Elias faced immediate, brutal social consequences. The second we exited the room, every wealthy guest surrounding them turned their backs. No one wanted to associate with the couple who'd publicly humiliated the billionaire's wife. No one wanted to be tied to the scandal that had cost the charity its largest funding source. Serena's perfect socialite reputation shattered instantly. The friends who'd laughed with her minutes earlier abandoned her completely. The influencers who'd admired her status distanced themselves immediately. All her carefully built clout, her curated glamorous image, and her elite connections vanished in seconds. Elias's professional career imploded just as fast. Multiple investors texted him mid-gala to pull funding for his startup. Business partners canceled upcoming collaborations. Industry leaders publicly condemned his lack of integrity and poor judgment. The rising CEO, who'd been on track for massive success overnight, became a social and corporate pariah. They'd spent years building their status, their reputation, and their elite connections, only to destroy it all in 5 minutes of cruel, arrogant bullying. Inside our private car, I watched the city lights blur past the window, processing everything that had happened. I hadn't gone undercover to expose anyone or create drama. I'd simply wanted to see the true heart of the elite charity scene. But the universe had revealed the ugly truth all on its own. Status and wealth do not make people good. Privilege often breeds cruelty, entitlement, and blindness to basic human kindness. Julian sat beside me, holding my hand tightly, his tone calm but resolute. I've already instructed my legal team to prepare formal statements. Elias's company will face full repercussions for his public misconduct, and Serena will be permanently barred from all future charity and elite events hosted by our foundation. I nodded, not feeling an ounce of pity for them. They'd acted willfully, cruelly, and without remorse. They'd humiliated an innocent person for their own entertainment, and they deserved every consequence coming their way. Still, I didn't feel triumphant or vengeful. I simply felt sad for them. They had wealth, youth, status, and opportunity, yet they chose to use their privilege to hurt others instead of lifting people up. They wasted their blessings on arrogance and cruelty. I don't want this to turn into a public spectacle, I told Julian softly. I don't need gossip or viral drama. I just want accountability and peace. Julian squeezed my hand gently. You'll get both. Accountability for their actions and peace for us. I won't let this scandal consume you. I'll handle everything quietly and firmly. By the time we arrived home to our quiet, luxurious private estate, the entire New York elite scene was buzzing with the story of the anonymous waitress who turned out to be Julian Carter's hidden wife. The gossip would not fade anytime soon, but neither would the powerful lesson we'd taught the entire city's privileged class. The next morning, the scandal dominated every elite news outlet, social media platform, and private social circle in New York. Headlines screamed across business and lifestyle pages. Unknown waitress revealed as billionaire Julian Carter's secret wife. Entitled Socialite destroys her reputation in public Gala humiliation. CEO's arrogance costs him millions in funding. The story went viral not just for the shocking identity twist, but for the powerful moral it carried. People admired that I'd chosen to stay humble and observe rather than flaunt my status. They respected Julian's unwavering loyalty and his refusal to prioritize wealthy donors over basic human decency. The public rallied behind our quiet integrity, while Serena and Elias faced widespread backlash. Serena woke up to absolute ruin. Every brand partnership she'd secured was canceled overnight. Every social event she was scheduled to attend removed her name from the guest list. Every luxury brand that once gifted her free items cut all ties. Her carefully curated socialite career was completely finished. She went from a rising elite influencer to a universally mocked figure overnight, known only as the girl who bullied a billionaire's wife and got caught. Desperate to salvage her reputation, she posted a long, tearful public apology online, begging for forgiveness and claiming she'd acted out of stress and ignorance. She tried to paint herself as impulsive and misguided, not cruel, but the public saw right through her fake remorse. No one believed her excuses. The video footage from the gala, captured by dozens of guest phones, circulated widely, showing her deliberate, unprovoked cruelty and arrogance. Her apology fell completely flat. Elias's professional fate was even worse. 3 major investors officially pulled 8-figure funding from his tech startup. Multiple corporate partnerships terminated their contracts. His company's stock value plummeted overnight. Young entrepreneurs and industry leaders publicly called him out for lacking basic integrity, stating that character was far more important than innovation and business leadership. His once promising startup teetered on the brink of collapse, all because he'd chosen to defend cruelty and arrogance instead of doing the right thing in a single moment. That afternoon, both Serena and Elias reached out to us directly, begging for a chance to apologize in person and plead for mercy. Serena sent dozens of desperate text messages, alternating between tearful apologies and frantic pleas for forgiveness. Elias called repeatedly, leaving formal, remorseful voicemails begging Julian to reconsider pulling industry support. I read a few of their messages before turning my phone off completely. I had no interest in hearing their excuses. They hadn't hesitated to humiliate me when they thought I was powerless. They hadn't shown me mercy then, and they didn't deserve mercy now. Julian stood beside me in our sunlit home office, reviewing the final legal and foundation decisions from the previous night. They're begging for leniency, he said calmly. They want to meet, apologize, and make amends. I shook my head firmly. There's no need for a meeting. Their apology is too late, and their regret is only for the consequences they're facing, not for the harm they caused. They're not sorry they humiliated me. They're sorry they got caught. Julian nodded in full agreement. Exactly. True remorse requires self-awareness. They still don't understand what they did wrong. They only regret losing their status and funding. He finalized the permanent bans. Serena was officially blacklisted from every elite charity event, foundation gala, and high society gathering our organization hosted worldwide. Elias's company was permanently excluded from all investor networks. startup accelerators, and philanthropic partnerships affiliated with our foundation. The consequences were permanent, fair, and non-negotiable. They had built their lives on arrogance and status, and those foundations had crumbled the second they chose cruelty over kindness. While their lives fell apart, our foundation gained massive public respect and support. Thousands of ordinary people donated to our charity after witnessing our commitment to integrity over wealth. Our mission, to support vulnerable communities, fund equitable access to opportunity, and reward kindness over status, resonated deeply with the public. What had started as a cruel public humiliation turned into a powerful global lesson about true wealth, true status, and true success. In the days following the Gala scandal, the entire New York elite social scene underwent a quiet, dramatic shift. Wealthy socialites, CEOs, and influencers who once flaunted status and looked down on service staff began practicing deliberate humility. No one wanted to become the next viral example of arrogant privilege collapsing spectacularly. Event organizers across the city implemented new rules mandating respect for all staff, volunteers, and low-level employees. Elite guests who once snapped at servers, dismissed staff, and treated workers as invisible started speaking politely, offering thanks, and acknowledging every person's dignity. The Gala incident had terrified the privileged class into rethinking their behavior. I received countless private messages from event staff, hospitality workers, and service industry employees across the city, thanking me for what happened. They told me they'd endured years of condescension, bullying, and disrespect from wealthy guests who thought they were untouchable. For the first time, someone had stood up for their dignity and proven that status did not equal power or immunity from consequences. Reading those messages humbled me deeply. I hadn't intended to become a symbol of humility or justice. I'd simply stood my ground when I was wronged. But the ripple effect of that single night stretched far beyond my own experience. It changed how an entire industry treated vulnerable workers. Julian and I discussed the shift at length one evening over dinner in our quiet home. People respect kindness only when it's enforced, Julian said thoughtfully. For too long, wealthy elites got away with cruelty because no one held them accountable. Last week proved that no amount of money or status makes you above basic human decency. I nodded. They worship status so blindly that they forget every wealthy person started ordinary. No one is born elite. No one deserves respect purely for their bank account. Respect should be earned through character. While our influence grew stronger and more respected each day, Serena and Elias continued their steep downward spiral. Serena's social media following plummeted. Her brand deals vanished entirely, and she was no longer invited to any high society events. She went from a rising star in elite circles to a social outcast, completely isolated from the world she'd spent years chasing. Elias's startup officially lost half its valuation within a week. Multiple key employees quit, scared of being tied to his toxic reputation. His dream of becoming a top-tier tech CEO crumbled completely. He was forced to downsize his company drastically, scaling back offices, laying off staff, and abandoning his expansion plans. All because he'd refused to stand up for basic human kindness in one critical moment. The saddest part of their downfall was that it was entirely self-inflicted. No one sabotaged them. No one targeted them unfairly. They destroyed their own careers and reputations with their own arrogance and cruelty. A week after the gala, Serena made one final desperate attempt to reach me. She sent a long private message laying out her deepest insecurities, admitting she'd spent her whole life chasing wealth and status to feel worthy. She confessed she bullied others because she was insecure about her own place in the elite world, putting down vulnerable people to lift herself up. Her message was raw, honest, and vulnerable, the first genuine thing she'd ever shared. She didn't beg for forgiveness this time. She simply apologized sincerely for her cruelty, admitting she knew she didn't deserve mercy. I read her message carefully, then thought long and hard before responding. I didn't offer her absolution. I didn't restore her status or reverse her consequences. But I did offer her a small measure of closure. I wrote simply, "Humility is not learned through success. It's learned through falling. Use this loss to grow into a kinder person. Status will never make you worthy. Character will." I never heard from her again. I didn't need revenge to feel satisfied. Watching someone learn a painful, necessary lesson was far more powerful than any petty victory. True justice wasn't destroying them. It was giving them the chance to change, if they chose to take it. In the weeks after the scandal faded from viral headlines, our lives returned to peaceful normalcy. We continued our foundation work, focusing on quiet, consistent charity rather than glamorous galas and public attention. We shifted our funding toward service industry support programs, offering training grants, fair wage advocacy, and mental health resources for hospitality and event staff. People so often overlooked and disrespected by elite society. I stopped attending high-profile galas entirely. I'd learned that the most meaningful charity work happens behind the scenes, not under crystal chandeliers and camera lights. True generosity doesn't need an audience. True kindness doesn't need recognition. New York's elite circles continued to whisper about the night the billionaire's wife humbled the socialite and CEO, but the gossip shifted from scandal to reverence. People no longer saw me as a hidden mystery wife. They saw me as a woman of quiet strength, integrity, and unshakable dignity. They respected my choice to stay humble, to avoid flaunting my status, and to prioritize kindness over power. Julian and I grew closer through the experience. The incident reinforced how perfectly aligned our values were. We both believed wealth was a responsibility, not a right. We both believed status was meaningless without character. We both believed the most powerful thing you could do with privilege was lift others up, not push them down. We received countless invitations to exclusive interviews, magazine covers, and elite talk shows asking us to share our story. We declined every single one. We had no desire to capitalize on the scandal for fame or profit. Our lesson had already been taught. Our impact had already been made. We didn't need public spotlight to validate our values. From mutual social contacts, we learned Serena had stepped away from New York elite life entirely. She deleted most of her social media, moved out of the city, and began working a regular, ordinary job with no status, no glamour, and no special treatment. For the first time in her life, she lived as a regular person, forced to confront the humility she'd spent years avoiding. It was a painful but necessary reset for her. She'd spent her entire youth chasing clout, wealth, and social approval, convinced those things would make her happy. Now she was forced to build a life based on character instead of status. Elias continued struggling to rebuild his shattered company. He lost most of his elite connections and was forced to start over from the bottom, working long hours with minimal funding and no investor favors. He learned the hard way that trust and integrity are the most valuable assets in business, far more valuable than innovation or profit margins. Neither of them achieved the dramatic comeback they'd hoped for. There was no sudden redemption arc, no forgiveness that restored their old lives. Consequences don't always reverse with time or apologies. Some mistakes reshape your life permanently. I didn't take any joy in their struggles. I simply recognized it as the natural result of their choices. Life balances itself out eventually. People who choose cruelty will eventually face the emptiness of that cruelty. People who choose humility and kindness will always build a richer, more meaningful life. One quiet evening, Julian and I walked along our private beach at sunset, talking about everything we'd learned. "You handled that night with more grace than anyone I've ever known," Julian said softly, squeezing my hand. "Most people would have lashed out, demanded revenge, and basked in the victory. You chose dignity instead." I smiled, watching the golden sunlight reflect on the water. I realized a long time ago that revenge chains you to the past. Grace sets you free. Months passed, and the scandal fully faded from public memory, but its lasting impact remained woven into New York's elite culture. Charity galas became far more inclusive, humble, and community-focused. Event staff were treated with consistent respect and gratitude. Entitled behavior from wealthy guests became rare, widely frowned upon, and quickly corrected. A single night of justice had shifted an entire community's moral compass. Our foundation thrived more than ever. Ordinary people trusted our mission because they'd seen our integrity in action. They knew we didn't use charity as a status tool or a public performance. We gave quietly, helped generously, and held ourselves accountable to the same kindness we expected from others. I continued living with intentional humility in my daily life. I rarely wore luxury items in public, avoided elite social events, and prioritized simple, genuine interactions over status-driven connections. I had nothing to prove to anyone. I knew my worth didn't come from my husband's wealth, my social standing, or my public reputation. My worth came from my character, my choices, and my commitment to kindness. I occasionally thought back to that chaotic gala night, to the moment Serena tore my dress apart, thinking I was powerless. She judged my value based on my uniform, my job role, and my visible status. She'd assumed I was insignificant because I didn't display wealth or clout. Her mistake was one millions of people make every single day, confusing external status with internal worth. So many people worship money, titles, and social influence, believing those things make you superior. But status is fragile. Wealth fluctuates. Social clout vanishes overnight. The only thing that never fades is your character. Serena and Elias had everything the world tells people to chase: youth, beauty, wealth, status, influence. Yet they were empty inside, cruel in their insecurity, and quick to harm others to feel powerful. They had external wealth, but zero internal wealth. Conversely, I'd chosen to set status aside, to live humbly, to treat every person with equal dignity. I had material wealth, but I never let it define me. I prioritized compassion, integrity, and grace, and those qualities made me far richer than any amount of money ever could. I heard occasional updates about Serena and Elias over the months. Serena never returned to high society. She lived a quiet, ordinary life now, working a stable job, building simple, genuine friendships, and staying far away from the glamorous world that once consumed her. She never again sought fame or status. It seemed she'd finally learned her lesson. Clout doesn't heal insecurity, and wealth doesn't create happiness. Elias managed to keep his small company afloat, but he never regained his elite status or investor prestige. He became known in the industry not as a rising star, but as a cautionary tale, a brilliant entrepreneur undone by his own poor character choices. He worked humbly, treated his staff with respect, and focused on building genuine value instead of chasing status. They both changed for the better, in their own quiet, painful ways. Their downfall wasn't purely punishment. It was a necessary wake-up call. One afternoon, I visited a charity event for service workers hosted by our foundation. As I stood among hardworking staff, volunteers, and ordinary people, I felt more at peace than I ever had at any elite gala. Here, no one cared about titles or wealth. Everyone simply valued kindness, effort, and community. Julian found me in the crowd, wrapping his arms around me gently. "You see what real wealth is?" he asked softly. I nodded, smiling warmly. "It's not in our bank accounts. It's in the lives we lift up, the kindness we give, and the dignity we protect." A full year after the unforgettable gala night, I reflected on how much my perspective on life and wealth had changed. That single moment of public humiliation had taught me more about strength, dignity, and true success than any peaceful, easy day ever could. It had stripped away every illusion about status, privilege, and power, leaving only pure, unshakable truth. I still lived a humble, grounded life, despite my family's immense wealth and influence. I continued avoiding elite gossip circles, rejecting unnecessary fame, and focusing my energy on meaningful charity work and quiet personal growth. I dressed simply, spoke gently, and treated every person I met with equal respect, whether they were a billionaire investor or a part-time service worker. New York's elite community still remembered the night. The arrogant socialite and entitled CEO fell from grace. The story had become a timeless lesson passed around private social circles. Never judge people by their appearance, their job, or their status. The quietest, most ordinary-looking person in the room might be the most powerful. The person you bully today might be the one who teaches you the hardest life lesson tomorrow. Serena and Elias remained living with the permanent consequences of their choices. Serena had fully abandoned her socialite ambitions, choosing a simple, low-key life free from drama and status chasing. She was no longer famous, no longer admired, no longer envied, but for the first time, she seemed genuinely peaceful. She'd traded fake glamour for real stability, fake admiration for real connection, and fake status for real humility. Elias rebuilt his business slowly and modestly, focusing on ethical leadership and employee respect above rapid growth or status. He never regained his elite investor connections, but he built a small, reputable company rooted in integrity, a far more sustainable success than the empty fame he'd once chased. They never reached out to us again. They never sought closure or forgiveness. They simply lived with their mistakes and grew from them. Julian and I continued building our legacy of kindness and integrity. Our foundation expanded nationwide, providing support for low-wage workers, equitable charity initiatives, and anti-bullying advocacy in elite spaces. We proved that wealth could be used for good, that power could be wielded with grace, and that status never needed to come at the cost of others' dignity. Looking back on that night, I no longer felt anger or humiliation. I felt gratitude. That cruel public moment had given me a platform to teach millions a vital lesson. Dignity does not come from money, titles, or social clout. Dignity is inherent to every human being. No one has the right to take it away. No matter how wealthy or powerful they are, the world will always prioritize status and glamour. It will always celebrate wealth and fame. But those things are temporary. They fade, shift, and crumble with time. Only character, kindness, and integrity last forever. Serena and Elias thought they could humiliate me because I wore a waitress uniform. They thought power came from their fancy gowns and CEO titles. They were wrong. True power comes from staying calm in cruelty, choosing grace in humiliation, and refusing to let others dim your worth. My billionaire husband didn't change my life by giving me wealth or fame. He changed everything by standing unwaveringly beside me, honoring my dignity, and protecting the truth in front of the entire world. He proved that real love and real power are rooted in protection, respect, and loyalty. Today, I walk through every room with quiet confidence. I don't need to flaunt my status to feel worthy. I don't need others' admiration to validate my value. I know exactly who I am, a woman who chooses kindness over cruelty, humility over status, and dignity over revenge. In a world obsessed with wealth, fame, and power, I've learned the greatest victory of all is staying true to yourself, even when everyone everyone else is playing a cruel, status-driven game. Status fades. Wealth fluctuates, but dignity always wins.